What they didn't know was that the performance wasn't over when they walked out my door. They just moved to a different stage. The study channel lit up first, Evan's voice sharper now, stripped of charm. "She changed it," he snapped. "She actually did it." The will, the policy, she nuked the whole thing. Lauren's voice small and tight. "So that's it?" she asked. "All of this. And we walk away with nothing. Not even enough to pay off." "We're not walking away," he cut in. "We're too far in. You think the guys I owe are going to pat me on the head and say, 'Oh well, at least you tried.' They'll take it out of my hide. And yours." A door closed in the background. Chairs creaked. The sound of liquid being poured. "I told you this could get messy," he said. "We should have pushed the vitamins plan harder before that dinosaur showed up. I'm not poisoning her." Lauren snapped some steel in her voice at last. "That was always your line, not mine." There was a long pause. "Fine," he said finally. "We do what we talked about at the airport. We don't need her dead right away. We need her scared. Scared people sign papers." My heart started pounding. "We set up a night," he went on. "She thinks I'm out. You and I make sure she's alone, doors locked, no staff. Then friends come over. She signs what she needs to sign. Then—" He let the sentence hang. "You're insane," Lauren whispered. "You're talking about torture." "I'm talking about survival," he growled. "If we walk away, we're dead anyway. At least this way there's a chance we get out of this with our necks attached and a few assets in our pockets." Her voice trembled. "And if she doesn't survive it?" she asked. Silence. Then his answer low. "Then we cry," he said. "And we tell the police she had a heart attack when burglars broke in. Just like we planned from the beginning." I stopped the recording and sat very still. There it was, the pivot the DA wanted. The clear intention to escalate, to hurt, to force, to stage. The overt act would come later when they tried to put their plan into motion, but the intent was already in my hands. I picked up my phone and dialed the number Leon had given me. He answered on the first ring. "Well," he asked. "They took the bait," I said. "They're angry the money's gone. They're talking about another kind of night. One where I come home to an empty house and they're not far behind." Leon's voice went very calm. "Good," he said. "Then it's time we make sure the only people walking into a trap are them." I looked around my quiet kitchen. The candles on the table had burned down to stubs. The plates were put away. The wine glasses were in the drying rack, catching the soft light from the stove. Somewhere upstairs in our bedroom, my old wedding ring sat in the drawer where I'd left it. I wasn't the woman who'd put it on anymore. I was someone else now, someone my father would have recognized. "Tell the DA," I said. "Whenever they're ready to spring that trap, so am I. Because if Evan and Lauren wanted one last night to finish their story, I was going to make sure it was the night my story turned in a different direction. For good. I always thought the worst night of my life would be the night I almost died. Turned out the most important night of my life was the night I watched other people's plans for my death fall apart. Not by accident this time, by design. 3 days after the dinner, the dream I told at my own table, I sat in a quiet conference room downtown with Leon, Mr. Henderson, a detective, and a young woman from the DA's office who looked like she'd slept in her blazer. She set a folder on the table between us. Inside were transcripts. My husband's voice. My best friend's voice. Their plans for me. Written out in black and white. Miller, the prosecutor, said, glancing at the pages, "I'm not going to pretend this is easy to look at. But I need to ask you plainly, are you willing to let us use all of this?" "In court, if necessary, use it," I said. "If their voices can save another woman from ignoring the same warnings I did use every syllable." She nodded, then took a breath. "They're escalating," she said. "The last recording talking about forcing you to sign papers, staging a home invasion, making it look like a heart episode. This isn't just insurance fraud anymore. It's conspiracy to commit violent crime. Can you arrest them now?" I asked. Her mouth tightened. "Soon," she said. "We're building a case that won't fall apart the first time a defense lawyer pokes it. Right now we have intent and planning. What we want is an overt act, something that shows they've started the machine rolling." I stared at her. "You want to wait," I said slowly, "until they try to hurt me." Leon leaned forward. "No," he said quietly. "We want to wait until they try to hurt the version of you they think exists, not the real you." The detective slid a small tablet across the table. You already have audio in the house, he said. We'd like to add video, cameras, a full recording setup. If they try to carry out this so-called home invasion they keep talking about, we'll have them on multiple angles. And me, I asked, where do I fit in this movie? The prosecutor folded her hands. They think they're going to drag you around your own living room and force you to sign away your life, she said. Instead, we'd like you to not be there at all. Leon nodded. We set a night, he said. You let him think you'll be home alone. You follow his script just long enough for him to relax, then you leave, quietly, with me, to a safe place. The detective added, meanwhile, we'll be in your house. Plainclothes officers swat outside the whole package. When your husband arrives with his friends and their masks, and their big ideas, he won't find a frightened wife. The prosecutor's eyes were steady. He'll find a room full of cameras, she said, and a whole lot of very patient policemen. I sat back in my chair. It was a strange feeling planning my own attack like this, like rehearsing a scene in a play where you know the ending but the other actors don't. What if he backs out? I asked. What if he senses something and decides to disappear instead? Leon shook his head. Men in his position don't walk away from their last best chance at a payday, he said. He's boxed in. Debts on one side, the law on the other. He'll try to push through you because he thinks you're the weakest wall. He looked at me. He's wrong, he added quietly. I thought of my father, of the night on the service road, of the vitamins, of my signature copied and sold. I'll do it, I said. Tell me what my part is. I won't let them write the last chapter. The night chose itself. Evan did, really. He came home one evening with a kind of brittle cheerfulness I'd learned to recognize in the last few months. Big opportunity, he said, loosening his tie, kissing my cheek. One of my contacts wants to talk late on Friday. Some foreign investors? Could be huge for us. Friday, I repeated, drying a glass. You'll be late, probably, he said. Might even have to stay near the office. I don't want you waiting up. Long week. You should enjoy a quiet night to yourself. Take a bath. Watch one of those old black and white movies you love. He said it like he was giving me a present. These days, when my husband gave me gifts, I checked the price tag twice, Friday. The same day the DA's office had circled on the calendar as optimal for staffing. I turned to face him, smiling faintly. A quiet night sounds lovely, I said. It's been a lot lately. He relaxed. Exactly, he said. You deserve it. Later, upstairs in the privacy of my bathroom, I texted Leon a single word. Friday. His reply came 10 seconds later, all set. Friday felt like any other day, if you didn't know what was coming. I went to the office, sat through meetings, answered emails, signed documents, reading every word now. Smiled at people who had no idea my husband thought our house would be a crime scene by midnight. By late afternoon, my stomach was a knot. Mr. Henderson called to check on me. You can still back out, he said. We have enough to make them sweat without this. I don't want them to sweat, I answered. I want them stopped. He was quiet for a moment. You sound like your father, he said at last. That helped. On the way home, I watched the city slide past the car window and thought about all the women out there who never got a second chance, whose stories ended with the tragic accident everyone believed. I thought of my own name in neat type on that insurance policy. Not tonight, I told myself. Not me. Not like this. Evan left the house at 6. Dark suit, fresh shave, a little too much cologne. He kissed my cheek in the foyer. I'll text if it's going to be really late, he said. Order in something good, okay? You earned it. Maybe open that nice bottle of wine we're always saving. I smiled. I might? I said. He paused. You sure you're okay? He asked. Searching my face. You've been different. Since the airport. I almost got kidnapped at a service road, I pointed out. Different seems reasonable. He nodded, looking appropriately guilty. I just want you safe, he said. Lock the doors. Set the alarm. Don't open for anybody you don't know. Yes, dear, I answered. He left. The moment his car was at the end of the street, I turned and walked straight to the study. The detective was already there. Plain clothes, no visible gun, sitting in my husband's leather chair like he owned it. Evening, Mrs. Miller, he said. Nice place. Thank you, I said. I'd like to keep it bullet hole free. He gave a small smile. We're wired, he said. Cameras in the main rooms, audio redundant with what Mr. Carter installed. SWAT team is parked 2 streets away in an unmarked van. Couple of regular patrol cars doing lazy loops where your neighbors can see them. Nothing that looks like a siege. And you're sure they won't try anything before I leave? I asked. He shook his head. They need you alone, he said. That's the whole point. They're not going to rush in while there's a chance someone else is here. They'll wait until the lights are low and the neighborhood's half asleep. We went over the plan one more time. At 8 o'clock, a car, Leon's, would pull into my driveway. I'd walk out with an overnight bag, lock the door, get in, and drive away. From that moment on, anyone who came to my door would not be visiting me. They'd be visiting the law. At 7:30, I stood in my bedroom and looked around. The bed I'd shared with my first husband, the closet where Evan's suits hung beside my dresses, the framed photos of vacations and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday nights. I opened my jewelry box, took out my wedding ring, and held it in my palm. I thought I'd feel anger, hatred, maybe satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of apologizing for being successful. Tired of shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. Tired of believing the lie that it was too late to start over because of my age. I slipped the ring back into its velvet slot and closed the lid. Downstairs, Leon knocked on the door. He looked like any older man coming to pick up a friend. Dark jacket, neutral pants, car keys swinging from one hand. Ready? He asked. No, I said honestly. But I'm going anyway. He nodded once. That's usually how courage feels, he said. The detective stood in the hallway, radio clipped to his belt. We'll take good care of the place, he said. You just enjoy your spa night. Spa night, I repeated, almost laughing. If only. Leon and I walked out together. I locked the front door. The porch light clicked on with a familiar little buzz. From the outside, it looked like any other house settling in for the night. We got in the car. As we pulled away, I glanced in the side mirror. For a moment, I imagined seeing Evan's car right behind us, bearing down lights off, full of anger. There was nothing, just my tidy lawn, my clean driveway, and my house sitting there like a trap waiting to be sprung. The safe apartment was across town. An older building, nothing fancy, clean hallways, sturdy doors, decent view of the freeway. The DA's office rented it out when they needed a place for witnesses to lie low. Leon opened the door with a key that didn't look like it belonged to him. Inside there was a sofa, a coffee table, a little dining nook. A laptop sat open on the table, cables snaking to a black box and a tangle of equipment. On the screen, my house appeared. 4 camera feeds, front hall, living room, study, kitchen. Empty for now. The prosecutor was there too, hair pulled back. Sleeves rolled up. She looked up as we came in. Right on time, she said. I hung my coat on the back of a chair and sat down, unable to tear my eyes away from the screen. Audio check, Leon asked, moving to the equipment. He tapped a few keys. Suddenly I heard it, the faint hum of my refrigerator, the tick of the grandfather clock, the whisper of the air vents, my house breathing. We patched in the older recording system you and Leon set up, the prosecutor said. Nothing you've done will go to waste. I watched the clock on the laptop. 8:03, 8:22, 8:47. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. Meeting. Running long. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the words. If I hadn't known better, they would have comforted me. Now they felt like a man checking to see if the trap he set was still where he left it. I put the phone face down on the table. At 9:12, headlights swept across my driveway. We all leaned in. The front hall camera showed the blurred shape of the door. There was a pause. Then my husband's key turned in the lock. He stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him. He was dressed in dark clothes now. No tie, no cologne, no meet the investor smile. He walked through the foyer with the practiced ease of someone who knows every creak in the floorboards. Home sweet home, Leon muttered. On the living room feed, Evan checked. The corners glanced toward the kitchen, then disappeared out of frame. A moment later, the study camera picked him up. He stood in the middle of the room listening. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed. We heard his voice in the tiny speakers. She's gone, he said. Car left around 8. No staff cars outside. House is dark except the usual. Bring the boys. He hung up. My heart thudded against my ribs. Here we go, the prosecutor said under her breath. It didn't take long. On the front hall camera, the door opened again 15 minutes later. This time, Evan didn't use a key. 3 men in dark clothing slipped in gloved masks, one carrying a duffel bag. Guests of honor, the detective's voice crackled over Leon's radio from my house. All units be advised, we have 3 additional subjects inside. Copy, someone else replied. Hold until signal. We watched as Evan gestured sharply, whispering instructions. The men fanned out. One went toward the kitchen, one toward the stairs, one stayed with Evan in the living room. "This is surreal," I whispered, "watching them hunt for me in my own house while I sit here in slippers." "Good surreal," Leon said. On the bedroom audio channel, I heard closet doors open, drawers sliding, footsteps. "She's not here," one of the men muttered. "Check the bathroom," another snapped. "We're doing this right." Downstairs, Evan's voice cut through. "Living room," he ordered. "If she got spooked and bailed, we still trash the place. We still leave a mark. She needs to feel it." I tightened my grip on the edge of the table. The prosecutor's eyes never left the screen. On the living room feed, Evan moved to the coffee table. My laptop sat there exactly where I'd left it. He hesitated. "What's that doing on?" one of the men asked. "Probably an update," Evan said. "She leaves it open all the time. Focus." He reached out and slid the lid up. The camera in the laptop blinked alive. For a second, all any of us saw was a reflection of the ceiling. Then the video call connected, and my face appeared on the screen. Not in my living room, in the small, plain apartment across town. Wrapped in a cardigan, hair pulled back, eyes very, very clear. "Good evening, Evan," I said. He jerked back like he'd touched a live wire. The men around him spun toward the laptop. In the apartment, Leon's fingers flew over the keyboard, adjusting angles. On the front hall camera, I saw the first shadows of movement outside the SWAT team, getting into position, a dark shape at each window. In my living room, Evan stared at me. "Grace," he said slowly, "where are you?" "In a place you can't unlock with your key," I replied. "Somewhere I can see you clearly for the first time in years." He glanced around, eyes flicking to the corners of the room as if he could feel the cameras now. "What is this?" one of the men demanded. "You said she'd be here." "Oh, she's here," I said through the laptop. "Just not the way you pictured it." Lauren's voice suddenly burst through the audio from the front of the house. "She's not in the car," she hissed from the doorway. "Her car's not here." "Are you sure she—" She broke off as she stepped fully into the living room and saw the laptop screen. "Grace," she whispered. She wasn't in a dress this time. Jeans, jacket, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Hi, Lauren," I said. "Did you bring dessert again or just muscle?" Her eyes filled with tears. "This isn't—" "I didn't," she stammered. Evan snapped. "Shut up," he snarled at her. "This is a bluff. She's probably upstairs. Some stupid security camera thing. Evan," I cut in, my voice sharper now. "If you want to spend your last few minutes of freedom wandering around an empty house, be my guest. Just know that every room you walk into has at least one eye watching you." He froze. Outside on the front hall feed, I saw the dark question mark shapes of the SWAT team at the door. I took a breath. "Look up," I said softly. He did. For the first time he saw it, the little black camera tucked high in the corner near the ceiling, red light glowing like a tiny, unblinking eye. He turned slowly in a circle, another camera above the bookshelf, one near the archway, another by the stairs. She wired the place, one of the men muttered. "This is bad man." "This is too late," I said. On Leon's signal, the detective's voice crackled over the radio. "Move," he ordered. The front door blew open. The living room camera caught everything in sharp, jerky angles. Armed officers flooding in, shouting commands, men dropping to the floor, hands on their heads. Lauren screamed. Evan went pale, his hands hovering for a second like he might reach for me through the screen. Then he did something I didn't expect. He ran. Not toward a weapon. Not toward me. Toward the back door. He made it halfway across the room before an officer tackled him to the ground. In the safe apartment, I watched my husband's face as they rolled him onto his stomach, pulled his hands behind his back, snapped metal around his wrists. He looked up at the laptop, breathing hard. "You did this," he said. "Yes," I answered. "You nearly ended my life. I decided to take back the rest of it." Lauren sank to her knees, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she kept repeating. "I didn't think he'd go this far. I never wanted." The prosecutor in the apartment made a note. "Get her," I heard the detective say. Through the audio, "She's on tape too. Conspiracy at minimum." As they led Evan and Lauren out of my living room in handcuffs, I felt something inside me unclench. Not joy. This wasn't a happy ending in the way movies like to show, but it was an ending to something that had been poisoning my life for a long time. Trials take time. Real life isn't like television. No one wraps up a case in an hour with 2 commercial breaks. There were hearings, plea deals offered and refused, motions and postponements, and stacks of paper taller than my grandchildren. Evan's lawyers initially argued he'd been set up, that the recordings were out of context, that he'd only been talking big and never intended to follow through. The DA's office played the audio of him calmly discussing how to stage my death. The jury looked unimpressed. Lauren tried to paint herself as a terrified bystander swept up in a man's madness. The transcripts of her coaching him, taking money, reassuring him that I was still on the hook, didn't help her case. In the end, the law did what it could. There were convictions, conspiracy, attempted fraud, attempted kidnapping, attempted murder, long sentences even with the plea bargains. People asked me if I felt satisfied. Satisfied. It's a strange word to attach to the sight of someone you once loved wearing an orange jumpsuit. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. Free of the constant gnawing sense that something in my house didn't add up. Free of the gaslighting. Free of the quiet shame that comes when a smart woman realizes she's been treated like a fool. In the months that followed, I poured my energy into something that felt bigger than just my story. The Charles Miller Foundation opened its doors with a modest reception. Widows came, divorced women, grandmothers suddenly raising children after a child had vanished into an abusive relationship. We offered legal workshops, financial literacy classes, support groups where older women could sit together and say, "He did this to me," and hear another voice answer, "Me too. You're not crazy. You're not alone." I stood at the podium that first day, looking out at their faces. "I built this fund with money my husband thought he'd get by burying me," I said gently. "Instead, it's going to help women who are still climbing out of the holes someone else dug for them." There were tears, hugs, laughter. Healing never looks neat, but it looks real. One crisp morning, almost a year after the night of the trap, I found myself back at the airport. Same building, same sweeping glass, same hum of rolling suitcases. Different woman. I was going on a trip. Not for business, not for a funeral. Just because I wanted to sit near the ocean and read a book and walk on the sand until my knees complained. Leon pulled up to the departure curb in his same old sedan. "You know," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt, "for a man who's seen as much trouble as you have, you drive like someone's grandma." "Grandmas live longer," he replied, smiling. He got out and came around to open my door. I stepped out, breathing in the cool morning air. This time we were at the main entrance. Bright, busy, full of life. No dark service roads, no waiting man with a knife and a bottle, just travelers, people going somewhere because they chose to. Leon lifted my bag from the trunk. "I'm only gone 10 days, I said. "The house will survive without your patrols." He shrugged. "It's habit now," he said. "Your father's voice is still somewhere in the back of my head." I looked at him. "You stayed," I said quietly. "Long after the job description ended." "It never really ended," he replied. "It just changed." We walked toward the sliding doors. At the entrance, I hesitated. "Leon," I said, "when I come back, would you like to come over for dinner?" No hidden microphones, no prosecutors in the other room. Just food. Maybe a game of cards I won't gamble on. He chuckled. "I'd like that," he said. "Long as you don't cook just chicken and potatoes every time." "I make a mean pot roast," I shot back. "We'll test that claim," he said. We stood there for a moment in the busy flow of people, 2 older souls who'd been through enough storms to appreciate a calm day. "Thank you," I said, and I meant more than just the ride. "For what he asked. For keeping your promise," I said. "For listening when I refused to. For reminding me that it's never too late to wake up." He nodded once. "Take care of yourself, Grace," he said. "Don't be too nice to anyone on that beach. You don't owe every sad story your whole heart." I laughed. "I'll try to remember that," I said. We hugged a simple, steady embrace. Then I turned and walked through the doors. The airport swallowed me up in its familiar noise. As I rolled my suitcase toward security, I passed the service corridor that led to the back roads. For a second I saw it again, the flashing lights, the tackled man, Leon's face saying, "Your father told me to watch out for nights like this." I paused, hand on the suitcase handle. Then I smiled to myself. That night had almost been my ending. Instead, it became my beginning. People think that when you hit 50, 60, 70, all the big changes in your life are behind you. They're wrong. Sometimes the biggest change comes when you finally realize the scariest night of your life wasn't a full stop. It was a comma. A pause. before the sentence where you finally start telling the truth to yourself and about the people who never deserved your trust. I walked toward my gate. Not as a victim, not as someone's wife, not as a woman defined by what almost happened to her. I walked as myself. Grace Miller, daughter of a man who saw the wolves coming, survivor of a marriage built on lies, founder of a place where other women could learn to see clearly before it was too late. The flight attendant smiled as I approached. "Good morning, ma'am," one of them said. "Heading somewhere nice," I smiled back. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I am." And for the first time in a long time, I knew it was true. My name is Grace Miller, and by 50 years old, I thought I'd seen every kind of storm a woman could go through. I buried my first husband. I buried my father. I survived business sharks who wanted to swallow the real estate company my father built from nothing. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the night a taxi driver locked me inside his car and whispered, "Don't get out here, trust me," while his hands shook on the steering wheel. It started like any other busy evening. I was sitting at the kitchen island, still in my Navy work dress, going through emails on my tablet. My second husband, Evan, was pacing the hallway with his suitcase rolling behind him, talking way too loud into his phone about some big opportunity overseas. His voice had that charming salesman sparkle that once made me feel safe. "Grace, honey, the car is already downstairs. I have to go," he shouted from the front door. "Did you take your passport?" I asked without looking up. "Yes, yes, love you." The door slammed before I even heard the end of the word love. A few minutes later, my phone pinged. It was a message from our building's concierge. "Mrs. Miller, Mr. Evan left his wallet at the front desk. Should we keep it or send it up?" His wallet. His ID, his cards, everything he needed to get on that plane. I sighed, pushed my tablet away, and replied, "I'll bring it to him at the airport. Thank you." Sometimes you pick up after the people you love. That's what I told myself as I grabbed my coat and the leather wallet still warm from his pocket and headed out. It was late. The kind of late where the city lights look beautiful if you're watching from inside your home, but lonely when you're the one standing on the sidewalk waiting. The air had that damp chill that crawls through your sleeves. I ordered a ride from my phone. A gray sedan pulled up, older model but clean. The driver rolled down the window and gave me a quick, polite nod. "Met Miller?" he asked. "Yes," I answered, climbing into the back. The moment I settled into my seat, I noticed something. His eyes in the rearview mirror. Dark, tired, but sharp. He checked the street behind us twice before pulling away from the curb. "Airport right," he said. "Yes. My husband forgot his wallet. I need to catch him before he boards." He only grunted, then drove. We moved through the city, the tall buildings slowly giving way to low warehouses and empty lots as we got closer to the airport. I watched the familiar skyline shrink in the distance. It should have been a normal ride, the kind you forget 5 minutes after it's over. But the driver kept looking in his mirror. Not just at the road. At me. Every few seconds his eyes flicked up, then back to the windshield, then to the side streets. The radio was off. No music, no small talk. Just the hum of the engine and my own heartbeat getting a little louder. "Is everything okay up there?" I finally asked, trying to sound casual. He didn't answer right away. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I saw his knuckles go pale. "Just traffic patterns strange tonight," he muttered. "A lot of closures." I looked out the window. The roads looked normal to me. A little empty maybe, but it was late. We passed a gas station, a closed diner, a stretch of dark fence with barbed wire on top. Something cold slid down my spine. We turned off the main road sooner than I expected. Are you taking a shortcut?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am. The app is rerouting." "Construction near the main terminal entrance," he replied quickly. I glanced at my phone. The map did show a different route than I was used to, curving behind the airport instead of straight toward the bright, busy drop-off lanes. The streetlights grew farther apart. Long shadows stretched across the road. On the right side, open fields and chain-link fences. On the left, a few old warehouse buildings and service entrances, all half asleep in the dark. Every instinct in me started screaming. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "This doesn't look like the usual way to departures. I don't want the cargo area. I just need the main entrance to the airport." "I know, Mrs. Miller," he said, voice tight. "Please, just stay with me a little longer." There was something about the way he said it. Not flirtatious, not aggressive, just desperate. We slowed down near a side gate. I could see a sign, "Service Road. Authorized vehicles only." It was the kind of place where you'd expect airport staff, delivery trucks, not a woman in a navy dress holding her husband's wallet. My hand slipped quietly into my purse and wrapped around my phone. If I needed to, I was ready to dial 911. "Sir, I really don't like this, I said, my voice shaking now. This isn't the right, that's when he did it. He pressed a button on his door. I heard the solid, unmistakable click of the car doors locking. I froze. The sound echoed inside my chest like a gunshot. Unlock the doors, I said, my voice suddenly cold. Right now. He took a breath, still staring straight ahead. Mrs. Miller, don't get out here. Trust me, he whispered. Every terrifying story I'd ever read, every warning my father ever gave me about being a woman with money flashed through my mind. I imagined the headlines, "Wealthy widow disappears after late-night ride to the airport." No witnesses. Last seen getting into a gray sedan. My heart started to pound so loud I could hear it in my ears. Unlock the doors. I repeated louder this time. I will call the police. That's exactly why I'm telling you not to get out, he said. They're already on their way. I blinked. What are you talking about? Who's on their way? He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on something ahead of us. I followed his gaze through the windshield. At first, I saw nothing but a stretch of dark pavement. Then, maybe 50 yards ahead, I noticed a figure standing near the curb, half hidden by a pillar. A man in a dark hoodie, hands in his pockets, not moving. We were still rolling forward, slow as a whisper. He's been following us since you left your building, the driver murmured. Black SUV, 2 cars behind. Then he cut ahead and pulled over here. The man ahead of us casually shifted from one foot to the other, like someone waiting for a friend, but there was no luggage next to him. No suitcase, no backpack, just empty concrete. And right about here, the driver said softly, was where you were supposed to get out of this key. The world shrank to the sound of the engine, the locked doors, and the shape of that waiting stranger. Everything in me wanted to scream, let me out, I'll run, I'll do anything. But my legs had turned to stone. What do you mean, supposed to? I whispered. The driver swallowed. I could see his Adam's apple move in the rearview mirror. Hold on, he said. Please. He eased his foot onto the brake. We rolled slower, slower. And then, like someone had thrown a switch, the quiet night exploded. Red and blue lights flashed from everywhere at once. Sirens wailed, sharp and furious, tearing through the dark. 2 police cruisers cut across the road in front of us. Another blocked the lane behind. The man in the hoodie spun around, ready to run, but he didn't get far. Officers tackled him to the ground so quickly I barely saw the movement. The driver's side door of our car opened as a cop shouted, "Hands where I can see them." My driver raised both arms immediately, palm open, fingers spread. "It's me, it's Leon," he shouted. "It's Leon Carter. Call Sergeant Walker, he knows." Another officer rushed to my side and yanked my door open from the outside. The rush of cold air hit my face along with the dizzying swirl of flashing lights. "Ma'am, are you okay?" the officer asked. "Did he touch you?" "Are you hurt?" I stared at him, my brain trying to catch up with everything happening at once. Behind him, I saw 2 officers wrestling with the man in the hoodie. They pulled something from his pocket, a folded knife with a gleaming blade. Another reached into a small duffel bag at his feet and lifted out a white cloth and a brown bottle. Even from where I stood, I recognized the smell when the wind carried it toward me. Bitter. Chemical. The kind of smell my father used to warn me about. Chloroform, one of the officers said grimly. He was going to snatch her right off the curb. My knees almost gave out. The officer beside me gently took my elbow. "Ma'am, I need you to step over here, please. We're going to ask you a few questions." As I stumbled out of the car, my hand brushed the roof to steady myself. The driver. This man who'd locked me inside just moments ago stood with his back against the vehicle, still holding his hands up his face, drawn and tired but strangely calm. Our eyes met. "Mrs. Miller," he said quietly, "I'm sorry I scared you, but if you'd stepped out where they wanted you to," his gaze flicked toward the man on the ground, "you wouldn't have made it to the airport at all." I stared at him, my heart still racing. "You knew I managed to ask. You knew this was going to happen." He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am," he said, "because your father told me to watch out for nights like this." My breath caught in my throat. My father," I whispered. "My father's been dead for years." The man lowered his hands as the officer beside him relaxed. "I know," he said softly. "That's why he hired me a long time ago." He held my gaze. "I'm Leon Carter," he said. "I was head of security for your father, Charles Miller. And tonight, Mrs. Miller, someone paid good money to make sure you didn't live long enough to ask the right questions." The sirens faded into the distance, but my world had already changed. In one short ride to the airport, I'd gone from devoted wife to nearly a kidnapping victim. and now a woman who suddenly had to wonder who hated me enough to arrange my disappearance. The police lights were still flashing when I heard his name again. Leon Carter. Yeah, I know who you are, the sergeant said, clapping the driver on the shoulder. Your boss trusted you. My boss. My father. Those words hit me harder than the cold air. I stood there on the side of that service road, clutching my coat around me, watching officers take photographs, bag evidence, and drag that man in the hoodie into the back of a patrol car. He glared at me like I'd ruined his plans. Maybe I had. Mrs. Miller, the sergeant said gently, walking over to me, we'll need a statement. But you should hear this from him first. He nodded toward Leon. He's been trying to reach you for a while. I turned to face the man who had just locked me in his car to save my life. Up close, I could see the lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples. He looked like a man who'd seen too much and slept too little, but there was something steady in his gaze. I'm sorry I scared you, he said quietly. Your father would skin me alive if he knew I had to do it that way. My father is dead, I replied sharper than I meant. Grief has a way of still stinging even years later, and I don't understand any of this. Who was that man? Why was he waiting for me, and how do you fit into it? He took a slow breath. Ma'am, this is bigger than one man in a hoodie, he said. This started long before tonight, and it started long before your husband forgot his wallet. He said that word husband like it tasted wrong in his mouth. I opened my mouth to defend Evan, then closed it again, because deep down, buried under years of trying to be a good wife, something old and uncomfortable was stirring doubt. The kind of doubt I'd pushed away the first time my father warned me. If you've ever been a widow in your 40s, you'll understand what I'm about to say. After my first husband, Michael, died, people saw me as something in between. Too young to be done with life, too old to be anyone's new beginning. I was the woman in the expensive black dress at charity events, the one running meetings instead of holding a man's arm. My father, Charles Miller, was proud of that. He used to tell anyone who would listen, my girl runs the company better than any man I ever hired. He'd say it in his rough old voice, chest puffed out, big hands on my shoulders. But in private, when it was just the two of us and a pot of coffee between us, he'd sigh. I worry about you, baby, he'd say. Not about your brain. Lord knows you got more sense than me. I worry about your heart. Daddy, I'm almost 50, I used to laugh. My heart's done with teenage foolishness. He'd shake his head. Doesn't matter how old you are. A lonely heart will still fall for a pretty lie. I wish I'd listened harder. After Michael died, I poured everything into work. I kept the real estate empire running, sat in rooms full of lawyers and developers, signed deals that would have made my grandmother faint. I made good money. I wore good suits. People respected me. But at night in that big house, when I took off the earrings and washed off the makeup, there was a quiet so loud it hummed in my bones. You can be surrounded by people and still feel like the only human on an empty planet. So when I met Evan, I was ripe for it, for the smile, the charm, the attention. He was younger than me. Not by a decade, but enough that people noticed. Tall, well-dressed, always with a joke ready. He said he worked in property development, which sounded close enough to my world to feel familiar, but far enough that we didn't step on each other's toes. We met at a charity gala. I was standing near the balcony, taking a breath from the small talk when he appeared with 2 glasses of sparkling water. You look like you need something that isn't champagne, he said. I smiled politely. Do I look that tired? No, he said, handing me the glass. You look like a woman who's been making sure everyone else is having a good time, and forgot about herself. It's a small sentence, but it holds a lot of power when you're tired and lonely. We talked. He asked about my work, but not in a greedy way. He asked about my hobbies, my favorite childhood memory the last time I took a vacation for fun, not for meetings. He listened, really listened. You'd be surprised how rare that is. The first time he met my father, I remember Daddy watching him like a hawk from across the living room. Later that night after Evan left, Daddy leaned back in his chair and gave a low grunt. He's pretty, Daddy said. I laughed. Daddy, he's not a show dog. I didn't say he was, he replied. I said he's pretty. Pretty men usually notice mirrors more than they notice people. Come on, you're being harsh. He grew serious. Grace, listen to me. Men your age are going to be scared of you. You got more money, more power, and more sense than they do. So you know who's going to come around: dreamers, gamblers, charmers. He shook his head slowly. I'm not saying this boy is bad. I'm saying you need to be careful, especially with your heart and your checkbook. I rolled my eyes like daughters do. Daddy, he doesn't even know what I'm worth. He likes me for me. My father rubbed his hand over his face, tired. I hope you're right, he murmured. But I've lived long enough to know. Some folks will tell you they don't care about money, all while checking the price tag on your soul. It wasn't the only talk we had. As things grew more serious, with Evan dinners weekends away, his toothbrush appearing in my bathroom, Daddy got quieter. Not loud, not rude, just watchful. One afternoon, not long before he died, he called me into his study. The room smelled like leather and old paper. His desk was covered in documents, trusts, deeds, a life's work laid out in black ink. "Sit down, baby," he said. I sat. He tapped a thick folder in front of him. "These are the papers that keep wolves away from your door," he said. "I've seen too many stories, women widowed, remarried, and then stripped clean by some slick talker who never loved them, just loved what they had. I won't let that be your story." I bristled. "Daddy Evan is not a wolf." He gave me a long, sad look. The kind of look only a parent gives when they see something you don't. "I'm not calling him a wolf," he said carefully. "I'm saying if I'm wrong, no harm done. But if I'm right—" He shook his head. "I want everything tight. I want people around you that aren't paid by your husband. People loyal to you and to me." He opened another file and pulled out a card. "Do you remember Leon?" he asked. I frowned. "The name sounds familiar. Security," he said. "He used to work big contracts, corporate buildings, executives, that sort of thing. Quiet man. Keeps his head. Doesn't scare easy. I put him on retainer before I got sick." "Daddy, I don't need a bodyguard," I protested. He gave a dry chuckle. "Of course you do. You're rich, you're kind, and you still believe people mean what they say. You're the easiest mark in the world." My mouth opened, then closed. I didn't like hearing that, but I loved him too much to argue more. "Fine," I said at last, crossing my arms. "You want this Leon to—" "What? Follow me around with a gun?" "No," he replied. "I want him close enough to hear footsteps when you're too in love to hear them yourself. I want him checking names when you start signing documents you didn't read closely enough. I want him to keep an eye on anyone who seems a little too interested in your bank accounts." He slid the card across the desk. "And I want you to remember this number," he said. "If something ever feels off and you can't put your finger on it, call him." I picked up the card, glanced at it, then slipped it into my purse, if only to make him happy. Life moved fast after that. Daddy's health went downhill. Between hospital visits and board meetings, I barely had time to breathe, let alone worry about bad men. Evan was comforting. He held me when I cried in the hospital parking lot. He brought coffee when I fell asleep in the waiting room. He told me I was strong when I felt anything but. When my father finally passed, Evan was there at the funeral, arm around my shoulders. Lauren, my best friend since we were teenagers, was on my other side, handing me tissues. Lauren and I had been through everything together: cheap apartments, bad dates, first jobs. She'd seen me before the money, before the bigger house, before the designer clothes. I trusted her like a sister. Between Evan's warmth and Lauren's loyalty, I felt held. Daddy's warnings faded into the background like a song, turned down low. It wasn't long before Evan proposed. He didn't ask in some fancy restaurant. He did it in our kitchen, barefoot, in jeans and a t-shirt, while I was still in my black dress from a board meeting. He took my hand, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "I don't want your money, Grace. I have my own plans, my own career. I just want a life with you. When I look at you, I don't see dollar signs. I see home." It was exactly what I needed to hear. I said yes right there, with the oven timer beeping in the background and my mascara already smudged from crying earlier that day about Daddy. Looking back now, I realize how dangerous it is when someone knows exactly what you need to hear. They can wrap you in words like a blanket, and you'll never see the leash. The memory faded, and I was back on that cold service road, the sirens quieting the taste of fear, still sharp at the back of my throat. Leon stood in front of me, hands lowered now, the officers giving us a little space. "Your father hired me before he passed," Leon said. "Told me you wouldn't like the idea of being watched. So we agreed I'd stay in the background, check things, listen. Let him know if anyone got too close for the wrong reasons." My mouth felt dry. "And did they—" I asked softly. "Did anyone get too close?" He held my gaze for a long moment. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "They did." My heart thudded against my ribs. "Who?" I whispered, though some part of me already knew. He hesitated like a doctor about to give a hard diagnosis. "Your father—" "He had a bad feeling about your new husband from the beginning," Leon said at last. "He told me straight. If anything ever happens to me, I want you to keep an eye on that man. I shook my head automatically. No, Evan loves me. He takes care of me. Leon's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Miller, the man who paid for you to be snatched tonight, didn't pick you at random. He knew your route. He knew your schedule. He knew you'd be heading to the airport to bring that wallet. He nodded toward the leather wallet still clutched in my hand. The name on the payment trail, the one that came up when we started digging. He swallowed. It matches your husband's. The service road tilted under my feet. For a moment I truly thought I might faint. My second chance at love. My partner. The man I defended to my father. And now the first name on a list, Leon called suspect. I closed my eyes, hearing Daddy's voice as clear as if he were standing beside me. A lonely heart will still fall for a pretty lie. When I opened my eyes, Leon was still there, steady as a rock. I know this is a lot, he said quietly. But we don't have time for gentle. Whoever planned this isn't going to stop because they missed one shot. He took a step closer, his voice dropping. Before your father died, he didn't just hire me, Leon said. He gave me a message for you. He said, if you ever get to a night like this, tell her to look very closely at the man sleeping in her bed. A cold, sharp ache spread through my chest. The man sleeping in my bed. My husband, Evan. I don't remember walking to the patrol car. 1 minute I was standing on that service road, Leon's words echoing in my head. The name on the payment trail matches your husband's. And the next minute I was sitting in the back of a police cruiser, a silver thermal blanket around my shoulders, like I just crawled out of a frozen lake. The sergeant leaned in the open door. Mrs. Miller. We're going to take you to the main terminal, he said gently. We'll get you somewhere warm and private to finish your statement. Do you feel steady enough to walk steady? That word almost made me laugh. I had spent years being steady. Steady in meetings, steady at funerals, steady holding everyone else up, while I stitched my own heart together in the dark. But in that moment, I felt like a vase someone had dropped and caught halfway down. Still in one piece, but only just. Yes, I managed. I'm fine. It wasn't true, but I said it anyway. Old habits. Leon was waiting near the front of the cruiser. He'd already been cleared by the officers, verified, recognized, no longer treated as a suspect. I stepped out of the car, pulling the blanket tighter around me. Are you coming with me? I asked. If you'd like me to, ma'am, he replied. I promised your father I wouldn't leave you alone on a night like this. There it was again. A night like this. Like my father had been expecting it, dreading it, planning for it. I nodded because the truth was I didn't want to be alone. Not with my thoughts, not with the questions clawing at the edges of my mind. We walked toward a side entrance of the main airport building, escorted by an officer. The automatic doors whooshed open, flooding us with warm air and the familiar sounds of rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, and tired children fussing near their parents. I'd always liked airports. They felt like movement possibility, places where people were going somewhere. Tonight it felt like walking into a stage I hadn't agreed to stand on. They led us up a flight of stairs, past curious faces and flickering screens, into a small glass-walled conference room overlooking one of the main corridors. I could see people walking below, hauling luggage, hugging, checking their phones. The sergeant set a paper cup of coffee in front of me. Take your time, Mrs. Miller. When you're ready, I'll need you to tell me everything from the moment you left your building. I nodded, wrapped my hands around the hot cup, and realized they were shaking. Leon stood by the wall near the glass. He kept looking outward, scanning the crowd the way I imagine a lighthouse scans the sea looking for storms. I focused on the coffee, on the steady heat seeping into my fingers, on anything except the word husband ringing in my skull like a bell. Evan can't be involved. He just can't. I clung to memories like proof. The way he sat beside my hospital bed when I had that scare with my blood pressure. The way he planned little weekend trips when he saw me getting swallowed by work. The way he kissed my forehead in the morning, even when we were fighting. People who want you dead don't kiss your forehead, do they? Mrs. Miller, the sergeant prompted kindly, pen ready. I took a breath. My voice sounded far away as I talked about the concierge's message, the forgotten wallet, the ride, the locked doors, the man in the hoodie with the chloroform-soaked cloth. I kept my eyes on the table. It wasn't until I mentioned my husband that the sergeant's posture changed. Your husband's on an outbound flight tonight, he asked. Yes, I said. Business trip. He was headed to Europe for some development deal. The sergeant and Leon exchanged a look. What airline? Leon asked quietly. I told them. Leon pulled out his phone, muttering something to the sergeant about checking the gate and flight status. The sergeant nodded, then stepped out into the hallway to radio something in. I stared at the coffee, the little ripples on its surface where my shaking made the cup tremble. A memory surfaced uninvited. 2 nights earlier, Evan had been on the phone in his office, with the door almost closed. Almost. Not quite. I'd been walking down the hall carrying a stack of documents when I heard his voice tight angry. "I told you it's handled," he'd snapped. "Stop calling me. You'll get what you were promised once everything is finalized." I'd paused, one foot in the air, something cold blooming in my chest. "Who are you talking to?" I'd asked later, leaning in the doorway as casual as I could manage. He'd smiled too quick. "Just one of the contractors. They're being dramatic about delays." I wanted to believe him, so I did. Now, sitting in that room at the airport, I began to wonder how many times I'd chosen belief over truth, simply because truth would have hurt too much. I glanced up. Leon was standing very still now, his eyes fixed on something beyond the glass wall, his jaw tensed. "Mrs. Miller?" He said, his voice a notch lower. "I need you to stay calm, no matter what you see next." That sentence sent fear shooting through me like electricity. "What is it?" I whispered, already turning to follow his gaze. Down below, the river of travelers flowed along the main corridor, people pushing carts, kids trailing behind, a businessman jogging toward a gate. And then, like a camera lens snapping into focus, I saw them. Evan, standing by the rail of the upper level just across from our glass-walled conference room. Not at the gate, not with a boarding pass in hand. Just standing, a suitcase at his feet. And beside him, laughing at something he'd just said, her hand light on his arm, Lauren, my best friend, my almost sister, in a red dress that clung to her like it had been sewn on just for this trip. The world went silent. All the sounds of the airport, the rolling bags, the announcements, the chatter faded into a dull, thrumming roar. My first thought was stupid and small, the way your brain tries to protect you from a blow. Oh, they ran into each other. What a coincidence. Then I saw it. The way Evan's fingers rested on the small of her back, the way she leaned into him, easy practiced, the way they looked like two people who'd been traveling together for more than just one escalator ride. Coincidences don't hold each other like that. I must have made a sound because Leon stepped closer. "Grace," he said softly. For the first time, he used my first name. "Listen to me. Do not go down there." "Not yet." My legs had already started to move. "You said he paid," I stammered, unable to form complete sentences. "Lauren, why is she?" "They can't." I took a step toward the door, but Leon moved faster, placing himself between me and the handle. He didn't touch me, just blocked the way with his body. "I know what you're feeling," he said. "But if you confront them now in public without proof in your hand, they'll spin this any way they want. They'll cry. They'll make you doubt your own eyes. They've had practice, Grace. You haven't." Tears burned the backs of my eyes. Down below, as if sensing a change in the air, Evan glanced up. Our eyes met through 2 panes of glass and a gulf of betrayal. For a fraction of a second, his face did something I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not shame, annoyance, as if I had shown up somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. Lauren followed his gaze. Her smile froze when she saw me. She went pale, then flushed, and I watched her lips form my name. Grace. Even from that distance, I could see it. The fear. Not fear of hurting me. Fear of being caught. Evan recovered first. His expression shifted like a mask being swapped out backstage. Shock, concern, confusion. He grabbed the handle of his suitcase and started toward the escalator, tugging Lauren with him. Leon swore under his breath. "Here we go," he muttered. Then to me, "Remember what I said. Let them talk. Don't give them more than you need to." I straightened my spine. There comes a moment in every woman's life, if she's lived long enough, when the girl she used to be finally dies, and something else takes her place. Something sharper, quieter, less willing to be fooled. By the time the door opened and Evan rushed in with Lauren, tears already glistening in Lauren's eyes, that new version of me was already pushing up through the cracks. "Grace." "Oh my God," Evan cried, coming toward me with arms outstretched. I didn't move to meet him. I let his arms hover in the air between us. He faltered, then shifted, pulling me into a half hug I didn't return. "What happened?" he demanded, pulling back just enough to look at me, his eyes wide. "We saw the lights, the police, and then they said your name at the security desk. Are you okay? Why are you wrapped in a blanket? Why is there a cop outside the door?" His words came fast, tumbling over each other. Too fast. Lauren hovered behind him, hands clutching the strap of her purse, eyes darting between me and Leon like a cornered animal. "I'm fine," I said, my voice flat. "Why are you still here, Evan?" "Your flight should be boarding." He didn't miss a beat. I was at the gate when I realized I didn't have my wallet, he said breathlessly. I went back to the check-in counter. They said you'd taken it to bring it to me. I panicked, Grace. I thought you might have gotten in trouble or... He swallowed. You know how crazy I get when it comes to you. A masterpiece of concern. Almost convincing. Almost. And Lauren, I asked, turning my gaze to her. She just happened to be flying out on the same late-night flight in that dress. Emotion flickered across her face, shame, guilt, anger, all too fast to catch. I was meeting a friend of mine here, she stammered. We bumped into each other near security. I saw Evan and he said he'd lost his wallet and you were bringing it. I just stayed. I was worried about you, Grace. She said my name the way people say baby when they know they've done wrong and hope the word will fix it. Leon stayed silent, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. The sergeant stood just outside, visible through the glass, giving us space, but close enough to step in if needed. I looked at the two people who had shared my dinner table, my holidays, my secrets, my husband, my best friend, two of the people I loved most in the world. And for the first time, I let myself ask the question I'd been fighting since the roadside. What if they were the same people who wanted me gone? An interesting night for coincidences, I said softly. Me almost getting abducted. You two just happening to be here. Together. Evan's head snapped toward Leon. Wait, what he exclaimed. Abducted Grace? What is he talking about? What happened? There it was, the perfect opening. I could have blurted it all out. I could have screamed, cried accused. I could have thrown the word kidnapping at them like a stone and watched what it did to their faces. But Leon's voice, low and calm, echoed in my mind. If you confront them now without proof, they'll make you doubt your own eyes. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I chose patience over rage. I turned to Leon. Would you mind explaining, Mr. Carter, I asked. You seem to know the details better than I do. He pushed off the wall, his posture straightening, his voice steady. An individual was apprehended just outside a restricted service road, Leon said, looking directly at Evan. He was carrying a knife and a cloth soaked in chloroform. He was positioned exactly where your wife would have stepped out of my car if I'd followed the drop-off instructions on the app. Lauren sucked in a sharp breath. Evan's eyes widened. What does that have to do with us? Evan stammered. Why are you telling me this? Leon didn't blink. Because the transaction that paid that man to be there, he said quietly, came from an account that leads back to someone in this room. The temperature in the tiny glass office dropped 10 degrees. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Evan's face drained of color. Are you accusing me of something? He snapped. I don't even know who you are. I know who you are, Leon replied coolly. I've known for longer than you realize. Silence stretched between us, tight as a wire. Evan turned back to me, outrage painted across his features. Grace, this is insane, he said. You can't just stand there and let this stranger, this hired gun, say these things about me. You know me. You know I would never hurt you. Somewhere deep inside, something cracked. I thought of his late nights on the phone, the lost documents that kept showing up for me to sign at the last minute, his sudden interest in our joint accounts whenever I had a medical appointment or took a long flight. You know me. Yes. That was the problem. I met his gaze. I know you, I said slowly. But tonight, for the first time, I'm starting to wonder if I know the real you, or the version you wanted me to see. His mouth opened, then closed. Lauren stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Grace, please, she pleaded. You're scared and you've been through so much tonight. Of course you're confused. But Evan loves you. I've seen the way he looks at you. Don't let this whole crazy thing make you think. Her voice choked. Leon's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then up at me. They've confirmed the first wire transfer, he said quietly. And they've found a second one. Same source. Different destination. What destination? I asked, my throat dry. He looked at Lauren. The second payment, he said, went to an account connected to your friend. The room tilted again. Lauren took a step backward, as if someone had shoved her. That's a lie, she whispered. That's not, I don't know what you're talking about. Her eyes were panicked now, darting from me to the door, to Evan, then back to me. I would never hurt you. Grace, she cried, you know that. We've been together through everything. Do you really think I cut her off, my voice shaking but firm. I think I said slowly that my father saw something in the two of you that I refused to see. And I think tonight was not the beginning of anything, just the first time you both got caught in the light. No one moved. Outside the glass, the world went on. Planes boarding, people hugging a child laughing as his father lifted him up to see the airplanes through the big windows. Inside my life as I knew it hung by a thread. Evan straightened his shoulders, anger flushing his face. "I'm not saying another word without a lawyer," he snapped. Lauren swallowed hard and nodded, clutching her purse like a life raft. For the first time since I'd met them, they looked small. Not glamorous, not confident. Just two people who had finally run out of script. Leon's voice cut through the thick air. "Sergeant," he called, his eyes still on the two of them. The door opened. The sergeant stepped in. "Yes, Mr. Carter," I think Leon said calmly. "We're going to need to protect Mrs. Miller a little more closely from now on. And I think you're going to want to look very carefully into the financial connections between her husband, her friend, and the man in your holding cell." I opened my hand under the table and felt the edge of Evan's leather wallet pressing into my palm. The same wallet that had dragged me out of my warm kitchen and into a kidnapping attempt, and now into the ugly, bright truth. A strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't clinging to the idea of who my husband and my best friend were supposed to be. I was looking at who they really were, and I promised myself right there in that little glass room above the airport that I would find out every single thing they'd planned for me, and make sure the ending belonged to me, not to them. They didn't arrest them. That, more than anything else about that night, was what stuck in my throat like a bone. After all the shouting and denying and fake tears, after Leon's quiet explanation and the sergeant's careful questions, my husband and my best friend didn't leave the airport in handcuffs. They walked out together. Different doors, of course, different directions. But they walked. "I'm not saying another word without a lawyer," Evan repeated, jaw-clenched hand already on the handle of his suitcase. Lauren just shook her head, lips pressed tight, eyes shining as if she were the one who'd almost been dragged off a dark service road and knocked out with a chloroform rag. The sergeant looked from them to me, then to Leon. "We've got the would-be kidnapper in custody, and the Financial Crimes Unit is already following the leads Mr. Carter gave us," he said carefully. "But right now, all we have on these two is suspicious transfers and circumstantial behavior. We can't hold them on that, not yet." "Suspicious," I repeated, my voice little more than a whisper. "A man was waiting to abduct me, and money from my husband and my friend is landing in his lap, and you call that suspicious?" The sergeant's face softened. "Mrs. Miller." "I get it. If someone tried that with my wife, I'd want blood on the floor," he said. "But if we move too fast, and the DA can't make it stick, they walk free and clean. No second chance. You understand, I did. I hated it, but I understood. The law likes proof, not gut feelings. It likes signatures, recordings, videos. It doesn't care how loudly your heart is screaming." Evan turned to me, his expression a perfect mixture of hurt and concern. "Grace, I don't know what's going on, but you know I would never," he began. I held up a hand. "I think we've all had enough for one night," I said. "Go home, Evan. We'll talk when I've slept." That last word almost caught in my throat. I couldn't imagine sleeping, not with everything I'd heard. Not with the sight of him and Lauren standing together burned into the back of my eyes. He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Fine," he said tightly. "Get some rest. We'll clear this up tomorrow." He reached out like he might touch my arm, then thought better of it. He turned and walked away, dragging his suitcase behind him. Lauren lingered for half a heartbeat. "Grace," she whispered, voice trembling. "Please don't shut me out. Call me when you calm down. I'm here for you. Always. Always." Funny how heavy that word suddenly felt. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Whatever she saw in my face made her look down. She followed after Evan heels clicking against the tile until the sound faded into the general noise of the airport. When the door closed, the small glass room went very quiet. Only Leon and the sergeant remained with me. "You want to file a restraining order?" the sergeant asked gently. "We can get you some emergency protection at least." I thought about going home to a house where every drawer and picture frame had been chosen with a man who might have just tried to erase me. "No," I said slowly. "Not yet. If we put something on paper now, they'll know exactly how scared I am. And people who do things like this, fear is a weapon they understand." Leon's eyes flicked toward me, a hint of respect in them. "What do you want to do then?" the sergeant asked. I looked at Leon, then back at the officer. "I want to know everything I said. Everything you found. Every number, every account, every document. I want to see the monster before I cut off its head. The sergeant nodded once. Mr. Carter can brief you on his end, he said. Our side will take a few days to pull together. In the meantime, I'll have a patrol car do extra loops past your house. No official report with their names on it yet. Just attention. Thank you, I whispered. He left us then, taking his notebook and his sympathetic eyes with him. The glass door clicked shut. For a moment, Leon and I just stood there, the bright airport world moving on outside like nothing had happened. Then he straightened his shoulders. Let me drive you home, he said. I'll explain on the way. You don't want to read this file for the first time in that empty house. He was right. I didn't want to meet the truth alone. We didn't talk much until we were off airport property. I sat in the passenger seat of Leon's old sedan, the silver blanket gathered in my lap, staring out at the streaks of light smearing across the windshield. My wedding ring tapped softly against the door with each bump in the road. It started small, Leon said at last, breaking the silence. That's how they like to do it. Little steps. Nothing big enough to blow up your life all at once. I turned my head. How long have you been watching him? I asked. Since before your father died, he answered. Charles asked me to run a basic background check when you started seeing Evan. Nothing too deep. Just enough to see if he was what he claimed. And was he? I asked bitterly. Leon gave a humorless smile. In the beginning, he was exactly what he claimed, he said. He had a modest but real career in mid-level property development, some debts but nothing out of the ordinary, a few late payments, a few risky investments. Typical man who wants to rush his way up the ladder. Nothing criminal, nothing that lit up my board, no. Leon agreed. Your father kept grumbling, but there wasn't much I could show him beyond. He likes to gamble a little too much for my taste, and he inflates his resume. I snorted softly. That sounds like half the men at those charity galas, I murmured. Exactly, Leon said. Your father didn't hire me to chase away half the city. He hired me to watch for danger, the real kind. That took a little longer to show itself. We drove past the glowing windows of late-night diners, the dark mouths of side streets, the quiet silhouettes of houses where people were already asleep. After Charles passed, things changed. Leon went on. With your father gone, Evan got bolder. He started spending more, traveling more. Your accounts became a little cloudy. I frowned. What do you mean, my accounts? I asked. Leon reached down and tapped a worn leather folder on the console between us. You sign a lot of papers, Mrs. Miller, he said gently. Board resolutions, contracts, authorizations. A woman in your position has a pen in her hand more than some people have a coffee cup. I thought of the piles of documents my assistants brought me, the places I initialed without reading every line because some lawyer assured me it was standard language. My stomach turned. And he slipped things in, I whispered. During that time, while I was grieving my father, Leon nodded. Not at first, he said. At first, it was simple joint accounts with simplified access, power to manage emergency transactions when you were traveling or ill. Nothing that sounded sinister. A lot of busy women signed the same thing. How did you know it wasn't harmless? I asked. I didn't. Not at first, he admitted. But then I saw where the money went. We passed under a streetlight. It lit the inside of the car, just enough for me to see the tightness in his jaw. He started visiting a private poker club downtown, Leon said. Not the friendly Friday night kind either. The kind where men with money they didn't earn sit in back rooms, with men who know how to collect what they're owed. My hands curled into fists in the blanket. How much, I asked quietly. At first, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, he replied. Then the numbers got bigger. 50,000 in 1 month, 80 in another. By the time I pulled the records, you'll see in this folder he was down more than $200,000 to some very impatient people. I exhaled slowly like my lungs were trying not to explode. And he used our joint accounts, I said. He did, Leon confirmed. He told the bankers it was for bridge loans and short-term investments. His charm got him through a lot of doors. And when charm didn't work, what I pressed. Leon glanced at me, then back at the road. He forged your signature, he said softly, on a few of the documents. It started with authorizations. Then one day, I saw something else in the system. Something else, a draft of a power of attorney, Leon said. The kind that would let him sell certain properties without your explicit approval. It didn't go through all the way. I think someone in your father's old circle, one of the lawyers or the bankers loyal to Charles, stalled it. Flagged it. It never became fully valid. But the fact he tried? My head was spinning. All those evenings I'd fallen asleep on the couch exhausted, trusting that my life was in good hands. I was married to a thief, I whispered. Leon didn't argue. We drove a little farther in silence. Why didn't you tell me? I asked finally, anger prickling under my skin. If you knew he was gambling with my money and forging my name, why didn't you come to me sooner? I tried, Leon said quietly. I called. I left messages. I sent envelopes to your office with summaries marked confidential. They never reached you. I blinked. Never reached me. The calls were always returned by an assistant of your husband's, saying you were too busy, Leon said. The envelopes were signed for by staff who mysteriously stopped working there after a few weeks. A sick understanding settled over me. Of course. If you're planning to rob someone blind, the first thing you do is unplug every alarm. Leon changed lanes, heading not toward my house yet, but toward the glow of an all-night diner. I realized I wasn't going to beat him by talking louder, he went on. Men like him know how to drown out bad news. I needed proof, hard proof. The kind that speaks even if no one picks up the phone. He pulled into the parking lot of the diner and cut the engine. Come on, he said. You'll want a chair under you when we go through this. The diner was half empty at that hour. A trucker hunched over a plate of eggs at the counter. A couple of teenagers shared a milkshake in a corner booth, eyes glued to their phones. The smell of coffee and fried food clung to the air. Leon chose a booth far in the back where no one could see the table unless they were trying. He ordered coffee for both of us, without asking. I was grateful. I didn't trust my voice yet. When the cups arrived, he opened the leather folder and began to lay out my life in paper form. Account statements, screenshots, printouts of emails and insurance policies. It escalated after your minor health scare last year, Leon said, tapping one of the documents. The high blood pressure episode. The night at the hospital, I remembered. I'd been dizzy at a board meeting. The room had spun. They'd rushed me to the ER as a precaution. Evan had stayed the whole night stroking my hand, telling me how scared he was, how he couldn't imagine life without me. While you were recovering, Leon continued, he met with an insurance broker. He slid a set of papers toward me. I read the words slowly as if they were in another language. Whole life insurance policy, insured Grace Miller, face value, $2,000. Primary beneficiary spouse, Evan Riley. My eyes jumped to the signature line. It was my name. Too perfect, too smooth. I never signed this? I whispered. I know, Leon said. A handwriting expert can probably prove that in court one day, but even without that, the timing is interesting. He showed me another page. Initial premium payment, joint account ending in 1429, my account. My chest felt tight, so he makes a bet. I said slowly, if I die, he gets $2 million. If I live, he still has access to my accounts as long as I think he's the devoted husband. Leon gave a short nod. And when the gambling debts hit a certain point, he added the math changes. It starts to look easier to pay off the wolves with insurance money than with winnings that never come. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to hold my skull together. And Lauren, I asked hoarsely, where does she come in? Leon pulled out another printout. Smaller transfers, he said. Not as big as the ones tied directly to Evan, but regular, steady. From a separate account your husband opened last year. Wire transfers to an account that belongs to a L. Carter. Different last name, but when we pulled addresses. He laid down one more sheet. Lauren's full name, our old neighborhood, the tiny apartment we once shared back before life got complicated. He funneled money to her. I said more to myself than to him. For what? From the notes in his messages, Leon answered. For updates. For keeping you calm. For cover stories. That sort of thing. I thought of the countless cups of tea Lauren had poured me when I was worried about something Evan did or said. You're overthinking it, she would say. Men are dumb with money. He loves you. Don't ruin your marriage over a few receipts. I thought of the way she always seemed to show up when I was doubting him, ready with a distraction or a joke. Like a nurse smoothing the blanket every time a patient tried to get out of bed. My hands started to shake again. So they were what I said. Business partners, lovers. Both Leon didn't answer right away. I don't know what they are to each other in their hearts, he said finally. I just know what the money says, and money doesn't lie the way people do. I stared at the pile of papers. Insurance, debts, forged signatures, wires to Lauren. And tonight I asked, tonight was, what? The grand finale. Leon leaned back, his gaze steady. Tonight was one version of an ending, he said. The man they hired was told to stage a grab near the airport, get you into a different vehicle and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. There were scripts, accidents, home invasions, poison. They've been floating different options for months. My skin crawled. Poison, I whispered. Leon hesitated, then pulled one last sheet from the folder. Text messages, he said. Screenshots. Between Evan and the man you saw in cuffs. They talk about making it look natural. Something in her system the doctors will blame on age and stress. I remembered the vitamins, the little bottle of extra heart support pills Evan had bought after my ER visit. The way he'd stand in the kitchen each night shaking one into his hand and pressing it into my palm, smiling. Take it from me, he'd say. So you'll be around to annoy me for another 30 years. I swallowed hard. You think he's already tried? I asked. Leon's jaw flexed. I think he's been working up the courage, he said. I think he's been looking for the cleanest way out of the corner he painted himself into. He's deep in debt. The insurance policy is active. And as long as you're alive, you're a problem he can't solve with charm. I sat back, the cheap vinyl of the booth creaking under me. For a long moment, I didn't speak. I just let it sink in layer by layer. My husband, my best friend, my accounts, my signature stolen, my life reduced to a number large enough to pay off the wolves at the poker table. Finally, I looked up. All right, I said quietly. You've shown me the monster. Now tell me how we cut off its head without letting it grow back. A slow, grim smile flickered at the corner of Leon's mouth. First, he said you stopped letting him write the story. He ticked points off on his fingers. You go to your father's old lawyer, not the new ones your husband likes. The old one who remembers when you were a kid running down the hallway with pigtails. You lock down your will. You change every beneficiary. If you die tomorrow, he doesn't get a dime. I thought of Daddy's study, the smell of his aftershave and old paper. Done, I said. Second, Leon went on. You close freeze or firewall every joint account you have. You move your personal holdings somewhere he can't touch without a court order and 3 witnesses. Won't he notice? I asked. He will, Leon said, and he'll panic. Men like him only have 2 moods, smug and desperate. Panic makes people sloppy. Sloppy people make mistakes. I nodded slowly. And third, I asked. Leon's eyes were very clear. Third, he said you play the part he expects. You go home. You let him think he still has you halfway fooled. You act confused, hurt, but unsure. You let him believe there's still a chance to talk his way out of this. Meanwhile, he pulled a small box from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. We listen, he said. We record. We give the police more than suspicious transfers and bad vibes. We give them his voice, his words, his plans. Once we have that, they won't just be suspicious people. They'll be defendants. I stared at the box. It was smaller than a deck of cards. Matte black. Ordinary. What is it? I asked, though I already half knew. Microphones, Leon said. A couple for your house, one for his briefcase, one for the little leather bag he never lets out of his sight. If you're willing, we can have your place wired before tomorrow night without him suspecting a thing. I ran my fingers over the edge of the box. I'd spent years being the kind of person who believed in honest conversations and eye contact and giving people the benefit of the doubt. But honest conversations hadn't kept me safe. Eye contact hadn't stopped him from forging my name. The benefit of the doubt had almost cost me my life. Now the world was asking me a different question. How much are you willing to do to save yourself? I closed my hand around the box. I'm willing, I said, but I want one thing clear, Leon. What's that? He asked. This isn't just about them going to prison, I said softly. This is about me writing the ending. Not them, not their debts, not their greed. Me. A spark of something approval may be lit in his eyes. I think your father would be very pleased to hear you say that, he said. We finished our coffee in silence. When we stepped back out into the night, the air felt colder, but my mind felt strangely sharp. Leon drove me home. As we turned into my driveway, the house loomed up in the dark, every window a familiar rectangle of glass. I'd once thought of it as a safe place, a nest, a haven. Now I saw it for what it had become, a stage, and tomorrow the performance would begin. I stood in the foyer, after Leon left keys still in my hand, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. My wedding ring gleamed faintly in the low light. I slid it off my finger. For a moment, I just held it, feeling the weight of metal and memory. Then I slipped it into my coat pocket. From tomorrow on, I whispered into the empty house, I'm not your wife, Evan. I'm your worst mistake. Upstairs in our bedroom, the little bottle of heart vitamins sat innocent on my nightstand, waiting. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand, and smiled a small, humorless curl of my lips. Let's see, I murmured, setting it back down, what you say about these when you think I'm fast asleep and no one's listening. The next day, I would visit my father's lawyer. That night, I would not take a single pill. And soon, with Leon's help, my house would not just be a home. It would be a trap. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I'd slept well. I don't think I slept at all. I lay there all night staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows slide slowly across the plaster as the hours crawled by. I listened to the soft breathing on the other side of the bed. Evan had come home late after the airport. He'd kissed my forehead like always, told me how terrified he'd been when he heard about the attempted kidnapping, spun a story about Lauren just checking on him, and then slid under the sheets as if nothing in our lives had cracked open. I lay there stiff and silent, pretending to be half asleep. He reached over at one point, fingers brushing for the little bottle of vitamins on my nightstand. I felt his hand pause when he realized it was gone. I'd moved it to the bathroom drawer before he came home. "Forgot to take your pill," he murmured. "I'll do it in the morning," I mumbled, turning away. He hesitated, then patted my shoulder. "Don't scare me like that again," he whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Once those words would have wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket. Now they sounded like a salesman sweet-talking a client he'd just overcharged. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I eased myself out of bed, showered, dressed, and put on my face like armor. Not the softer makeup I wore on lazy days. The full version hair set, lipstick lined, just right. The navy suit my father used to say made me look like the boss of the world. Evan was still snoring lightly when I left the bedroom. In the kitchen, the housekeeper looked up in surprise. "Early start today, Mrs. Miller?" she asked. "Yes," I said, pouring myself coffee. "I've got an appointment with Mr. Henderson." Her eyebrows went up. The name hung between us. Everyone who'd been around my family long enough knew what that name meant. My father's oldest lawyer, the man who'd drawn up the first documents when Charles Miller bought his first shabby little rental house 40 years ago, the one who'd scolded me for signing my first big contract without reading every clause. The old fox Daddy used to call him. Ugly briefcase, beautiful mind. I hadn't seen him much since Evan started bringing in his guys from newer firms with shinier offices. "I'll be out most of the morning," I added. "If Mr. Riley asks, tell him I had errands." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on my face for a second. I left before Evan came downstairs. I knew if I looked into his sleepy, practiced smile right, then some foolish, tender part of me might hesitate. I couldn't afford hesitation anymore. Mr. Henderson's office hadn't changed since I was a teenager. Same dark wood shelves crowded with law books, same rattling air vent, same ugly framed photograph of him shaking my father's hand in front of our first small office building. He got to his feet as I walked in, moving slower than he used to, but his eyes still sharp behind his glasses. "Gracie," he said, using the childhood nickname only he and my father ever used. "I was beginning to think your new crop of lawyers had stolen you from me for good." "Not a chance," I said, forcing a smile. "They've got flashier ties. You've got the brain." He chuckled, gestured for me to sit, then his expression turned serious. "I heard about last night," he said. "Leon called me." Of course he had. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. I let the question sit a moment. "I'm alive," I said at last, and I've finally taken my head out of the sand. "That's a start." He nodded slowly. "All right then," he said, steepling his fingers. "Tell me what you want to do." I took a breath. "My husband has a $2 million life insurance policy on me that I never agreed to," I began. "Paid for with my money forged in my name. He has access to too many of my accounts. He's drowning in gambling debt. And last night someone paid good money to make sure I never made it to that airport." I held his gaze. "I want to make sure that if I die," I said, "the man who arranged it doesn't get a single penny. Not one. I want every path he thinks leads to my money to run straight into a brick wall." For a moment I saw my father's expression on the old lawyer's face, satisfaction wrapped inside worry. "That sounds," he said quietly, "like the Charles Miller I knew." We spent the next 2 hours buried in paper. First the will. Mr. Henderson pulled out the most recent version he'd drafted before Evan's team started tinkering. "Your father built protections in," he reminded me. "Clauses that kept certain core holdings out of marital property. We can sharpen those. We did more than sharpen. We carved." By the time we were done, the document looked very different. If I died of a heart attack at 90, everything would be distributed in an orderly way, trusts, charities, a few personal gifts. But if I died under suspicious or violent circumstances before the age of 65, every major asset would bypass Evan entirely and pour into a foundation in my father's name, earmarked for women who'd been financially or physically abused by their partners. "You're sure about this?" Mr. Henderson asked. "Once we file, it's ironclad." I thought of Evan's face at the airport. That flash of annoyance when he saw me alive behind the glass. I'm sure, I said. If he wants my death so badly, let him choke on the consequences. Next, we dealt with the joint accounts. Some of these you can close today, Mr. Henderson said, circling numbers with his pen. Others will freeze under the justification of suspected fraud. If your signature was forged on any of the instruments, that's not a stretch. And he'll be notified, I asked. He nodded. He'll try to spin it, he said. But you won't be at the end of a cliff anymore. You'll be standing on a ledge with a fence. Good, I said. I'm tired of feeling like I'm always one step away from falling. Lastly, the insurance. That policy is poison, I said, tapping the paper Leon had given me the night before. Legally, it's valid until proved otherwise, Henderson said. But the beauty of life insurance is, as long as you're alive, you have some options. You can contest the signature, demand an investigation, or simplest, you can change the beneficiary. I blinked. I can. You're the insured, he said. If the company believes you're the one walking and talking, you outrank whoever faked your name. They may not love the paperwork hassle, but they must respect it. He slid a form toward me. Who do you want to leave $2 million to if not your charming gambler? He asked dryly. I thought of my father. I thought of all the women who'd sat in his office over the years crying, asking what they could still keep after some man had taken everything else. I picked up the pen. The same foundation, I said. Let the money he meant to collect off my corpse go to the women standing where he wanted me to stand. The old lawyer smiled, slow and satisfied. I wish Charles could see you right now, he murmured. He always said you had steel in you. I'm glad you finally believe it. By the time I left his office, my head was ringing with legal language, and my hand ached from signing. This time I read every line. This time I knew exactly what story my signature was writing. Leon arrived at the house that afternoon with 2 technicians. To anyone watching, they looked like regular service guys, one in a cable company jacket, the other in a plain polo shirt with a clipboard. To me, they were the thin line between suspicious and evidence. The housekeeper let them in as if this was nothing more than a routine upgrade. Internet is so slow in the back rooms, I said lightly in case anyone was listening. My husband is always complaining. Maybe this will finally make him happy. Leon's eyes flicked to mine, understanding the little performance. While one man checked the router, the other tested signal strength in various rooms. In reality, they tucked tiny microphones where no nervous husband would think to look inside a hollow book on the bedroom shelf. Under the lip of the kitchen island, behind the framed photograph of us on the staircase landing, places where sound travels naturally, places where people forget they're being watched. In our bedroom, Leon stood in front of my vanity, studying the reflection of the room. Where does he stand when he talks on the phone in here? He asked. I pointed to the window. He likes to look outside, I said. He says it helps him think. Leon nodded and put one of the smallest bugs on the inside of the curtain rod bracket. Let him think, he murmured. We'll listen. By the time they were done, my house looked exactly the same to the naked eye. But to me it felt different. Like a stage where I'd finally installed cameras facing the audience, instead of just letting them watch me. At the front door, Leon handed me a slim, innocuous-looking tablet. This connects to the receivers, he said. You'll be able to listen live or review recordings later. I'll have backup copies stored off-site in case anything happens to your devices. In case anything happens to me, you mean I said not unkindly. He didn't deny it. If tonight goes the way I think it will, he said, we'll start getting the kind of things prosecutors like to play for juries. I held the tablet as if it were made of glass. Then, let's give them a good show, I said. Evan came home earlier than usual that evening. He kissed my cheek in the hallway, eyes searching my face. You look tired, he said. Rough day. I smiled faintly. Just a lot to think about, I said. Attempted kidnappings, policemen, that sort of minor inconvenience. He winced. Grace, I'm so sorry about last night, he said. I should have been with you. I never should have left without my wallet. If I'd known you didn't, I interrupted gently. And you were at the airport. I saw you. That flash of something annoyance again passed over his face before he smoothed it into concern. We were just trying to find you, he said. Lauren happened to be there meeting a friend. When we heard your name at the desk, I raised a hand. Evan. I'm too tired for stories, I said softly. I'm scared, I'm confused, but I'm not ready to fight. Not tonight. He relaxed a little. That's okay, he murmured, drawing me into a hug. We don't have to fight, we'll get past this. You and me against the world, right? His chin rested on top of my head. My arms were loosely around his waist, Over his shoulder, I could see the family picture on the wall. Somewhere behind that frame, a little microphone was listening to every word. Later in the kitchen, I made his favorite pasta. We sat at the island eating, talking about small things, the weather, work, the neighbor's dog. I let him carry the conversation, nodding, laughing when appropriate. I played my part well. After dinner, he pulled out his laptop, frowning. "That's strange," he muttered. "One of the accounts is showing as under review. Might be a bank glitch." I rinsed plates in the sink, my back to him, hiding the small smile, tugging at my lips. "Oh," I said. "I'm sure they're just being extra careful after hearing about last night. Fraud protocols and all that." "You talked to the bank?" he asked sharply. "I mentioned it to Mr. Henderson," I said, keeping my tone breezy. "He suggested putting a couple of flags just in case anyone tried to use my name without my say-so. You know how paranoid old lawyers are." There was a long pause. I could feel his eyes on my back. Then his chair scraped. "Yeah," he said softer now. "Yeah, sure. Just overkill, probably. No big deal." He kissed my temple on his way upstairs. I wiped my hands on a towel and exhaled slowly. In the pantry, tucked behind a row of cereal boxes, the little receiver light blinked quietly, recording. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of fear this time. Because of waiting. The house settled around us, creaking and sighing the way old houses do. The grandfather clock chimed 10:11. Near midnight, Evan's breathing shifted. He always slept on his side at first, then rolled onto his back when he fell deeply asleep. A small snore, almost a hum, escaped his throat. I lay there, eyes closed, counting seconds. When his breathing had stayed steady for 10 full minutes, I slid out of bed as quietly as I could and padded down the hall to the small sitting room. I curled up in an armchair, pulled a throw over my lap, and turned on the tablet Leon had given me. The app opened to a series of labeled channels: kitchen, bedroom, study, hallway. Most showed flat waves of silence. I tapped study. For a moment, nothing. Then faintly footsteps, a chair, the rustle of fabric, his voice. "She thinks it's all bank overkill," Evan said, a little laugh in his tone. "Can you believe it?" Sweet as ever. Jumping at shadows after last night, but still trying to make sense of it in a way that doesn't make me the villain. Another voice, sharper, familiar. "Lauren." "Don't get cocky," she snapped. "Leon showing up like that was not part of the plan, Evan. You told me the driver would be some kid who followed GPS, not a ghost from her father's past." Evan exhaled. "Yeah, well, ghosts are annoying that way," he muttered. "Look, it doesn't matter. The guy's a has-been. Security fossil. The cops don't have anything concrete on us, or we'd be in cuffs not sipping wine in your living room." My hand tightened around the tablet. So that's where he was. Not in our bed, not in our home, in hers. I listened. "We still have a problem," Lauren said. "The money, the insurance. The policy is useless if she doesn't. You know. Di Evans supplied dry. You can say it, Lauren. You won't summon lightning." Silence. "Maybe we should back off," she said hesitantly, with Leon sniffing around with the bank flags. "Maybe this is a sign. We cut our losses, sell what we can, start over somewhere small." He laughed then, a nasty, bitter sound I'd never heard from him before. Start over with what he scoffed. "My credit score and your savings account, I owe more than 200 grand to guys who don't take sorry as a payment plan. We're past the point of clean exits, babe. Babe." I felt something inside me go cold and very, very still. "Besides," he continued, "we're so close. The policy's active. Her health record already has that little scare in it. We just need one believable event, and poof, everyone cries over the tragic widow who worked too hard and didn't take care of her heart." "She didn't take the vitamin last night," Lauren said, voice low. "You noticed I did," he said. She moved the bottle. "Maybe she spooked. Fine. We pivot. The guy at the airport blew it, but he's not our only option." We talked about other ways, like what she asked, but from her tone she already knew. A chair creaked. "Home invasion," Evan said. "Break-in gone wrong. She's rich, she's visible, she's had weird press about security concerns now. Cops eat that narrative up. We take some things, rough the place a bit, make it look messy. She gets scared, resists, has a heart episode. And if she doesn't," Lauren whispered, "if she fights harder than you think." He shrugged. I could hear the rustle. "Then she has an accident. People fall," he said. "Women her age, bones break, heads hit things. That's just statistics." My stomach lurched. He said it the way someone talks about bad weather. Inconvenient, unpleasant, inevitable. Lauren's voice dropped. I didn't sign up to watch her die, she muttered. I thought we were talking about money, about finally getting what you deserve after all those other years being the poor one in every room. I didn't think, you didn't think this far? He cut in sharp now. Well, we're here. You like the idea of that villa we picked out? You like the number of zeros on the payout. This is the part where we earn it. Silence stretched. I could almost see her biting her lip, weighing greed against whatever was left of her conscience. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. So what now, she asked. She's spooked. That security dinosaur is sniffing your finances. Your little forgery tricks are catching up to you. How do you see this playing out? Evan sighed. We give it a week, he said. Let the drama cool down. I play the doting husband. I support her. She'll want to believe me because the alternative is too painful. Then, a pause. Then I set up a night, he went on. Business trip, maybe. I forget something. She rushes home alone. The cameras at the gate will show her arriving. After that, our friends take over. 10 minutes in and out. I come back, find her, call 911, cry on cue. Lauren made a small sound of disgust. You're a good actor, she said. You liked that about me once, he replied lightly. Don't get moral now. We're past that exit. Remember, I stopped the playback. My hands were shaking too hard. I pressed the tablet to my chest and closed my eyes. There it was, not suspicious wires, not gut feelings, his voice, his plan, his timeline, proof. After a long time, I opened my eyes again and hit save. The file name blinked on the screen. Evan Study Conversation 1, one of many I knew. This was just the overture. When the first gray light of morning crept around the edges of the curtains, I went back to bed. I slid under the covers carefully. Evan rolled toward me, burying his face in my hair. He mumbled. You okay? Yes, I whispered, staring at the ceiling. Better than I've been in a long time, because for the first time I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. That afternoon I called Lauren. Hey, stranger, she said, the brightness in her voice just a little forced. I wasn't sure if you were ready to talk to me yet. I'm tired of fighting, I said. I miss my friend. There was a pause, then a soft exhale of relief. I miss you too, she said quickly. I've been so worried, Grace. This whole thing is nuts. We just need to sit down, all three of us, and clear the air. I agree, I said. How about dinner here this weekend? Just us. No drama, no police, no strangers. I could almost hear her smile. That sounds perfect, she said. I'll bring dessert. Lovely, I replied. We hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long moment, then put it down on the table. The house was quiet around me. But I knew better now. My house wasn't quiet anymore. It was awake, listening, waiting, just like me. And if Evan and Lauren thought that dinner would be one more step toward my burial, they were in for a surprise. Because by the time we sat down at that table, I would no longer be the woman who believed their every word. I would be the woman who turned their own words into a noose. For them. Not for me. The days leading up to that dinner felt like standing on a bridge made of glass. From the outside, everything looked the same. The house, the routines, the polite little kisses in the hallway. Evan went to work. Lauren sent me funny videos. The staff bustled in and out, polishing and vacuuming and cooking, but under the surface, everything had changed. My will was different. My accounts were different. The life insurance policy he was counting on had a brand new beneficiary. I had proof of his plans sitting in a file on Leon's laptop and backed up in more places than I could count. And my house, our house, had ears. The morning of the dinner, Leon met me at a small park not far from my neighborhood. We sat on a bench under a tree, two middle-aged people in sensible coats looking for all the world like we were talking about grandchildren instead of attempted murder. You listened to the whole recording, he asked. I nodded, staring out at the pond. Every word I said. He really does think of me as a problem to solve. Leon grunted. Greedy men lose track of the fact that their problems are human beings, he said. Always been that way, always will be. He had his old leather bag with him. It reminded me of Mr. Henderson's ugly briefcase. A certain generation of men seemed to believe a worn bag made them invisible. He pulled out a folder and slid it onto the bench between us. The DA's office has a preliminary copy of this, he said. They're interested. Very interested. But they want more. They want intent conspiracy, and if possible, an overt act that doesn't risk you bleeding out on your living room floor. Understandable, I murmured. He glanced at me. Tonight is a good chance, he said. You'll be relaxed in control. They'll be drinking. They'll slip. And if what we heard the other night is any indication, they're already thinking about changing tactics now that the vitamin plan is compromised. I remembered Lauren's nervous voice on the recording. Maybe we should back off. And Evan's answer cold and smooth. We're past the point of clean exits, babe, so I just... Poke them, I asked. Tell them enough to scare them, not enough to make them run. Leon smiled a little. You tell them a story, he said. You're good at that. A story, I repeated. A dream, he corrected softly. People confess more to dreams than to questions. Your father used to say that. If you want a liar to show his hand, tell him your nightmare and watch which part makes him sweat. I could almost hear Daddy saying it. I folded my hands in my lap. All right, I said. Tonight I'll tell them a dream. And when they panic and start adjusting their plans, Leon said, the house will hear. I'll be listening too. So will a detective and a very eager young prosecutor. He patted the bag. Time to let them write their own indictment, he added. I spent the afternoon cooking. I didn't have to. I could have had the staff do it or ordered catering or pretended to be too shaken by recent events to fuss with pots and pans. But there's something very grounding about chopping onions when your life is untangling. Hands busy. Heart steadier. I made Evan's favorite roast chicken, Lauren's favorite potatoes the way we used to make them in our tiny first apartment, crispy edges, too much garlic herbs from the little window box, a big green salad with the dressing my father loved. If I was going to put my past on trial tonight, I might as well invite all of it to the table. The housekeeper looked at the spread and shook her head, smiling. Going all out, Mrs. Miller, she said. It's been a hard week, I replied. Sometimes you fight the darkness with chicken and potatoes. She laughed, not understanding the weight of the words, and went back to polishing silver. By the time the doorbell rang, the house smelled warm and rich and welcoming. If a stranger had walked in, they would have thought this was a celebration. In a way it was. Just not the kind my guests were hoping for. Lauren arrived first. She always did. She liked to swoop in before everyone else and declare herself kitchen supervisor. She stepped inside wrapped in a cream-colored coat, her red dress from the airport, replaced with something softer, flowing blue, modest neckline, just a hint of sparkle at the ears. Grace, she cried, arms wide. Oh, I've missed you. I let her hug me. That's the thing about long friendships, even when you know the other person has betrayed you. Your body remembers every Christmas, every breakup, every night you fell asleep on the same worn sofa after too much cheap wine. For a moment, I smelled our old apartment. Then the scent shifted back to my house, my perfume, her expensive shampoo. We saw each other last week, I said mildly, stepping back. She made a face. You know what I mean, she scolded. We haven't had this you and me in your kitchen with too much food and gossip and maybe a little too much wine. She glanced around, lowering her voice. How are you really? She asked. I've been worried sick. Evan says you're distant. Do I seem distant? I asked, tilting my head. She hesitated. A little, she admitted. But that's normal. You've been through a trauma. I smiled. You have no idea, I said softly. Her brows knit together. I turned away before she could read too much on my face. Could you toss the salad? I asked. You always did it better than me. Something about the wrist. She laughed and moved toward the counter sleeves, pushed back, slipping into the familiar rhythm of our shared history. From the corner of my eye, I saw the tiny blink of the receiver light on top of the fridge. The house was listening. We made small talk while we finished setting the table. Work. Fashion. The neighbor's new car. All the little shiny pebbles people scatter over the top of a conversation so no one sees the hole underneath. Evan walked in just as I was lighting the candles. He looked annoyingly handsome, white shirt, dark slacks, that easy smile that had once made my knees weak. He carried a bottle of wine. Smells incredible in here, he said, kissing my cheek. Look at us dinner at home like normal people instead of you closing deals and me catching flights. Normal is underrated, I replied. He set the bottle down and hugged Lauren in that friendly way that now made my skin crawl. I watched them both. The way their eyes met a fraction of a second too long. The way they automatically moved around each other in the kitchen, like this wasn't the first time they'd shared space without me. I filed it away. Not because I needed more proof of their closeness, but because I wanted to remember how blind I'd been. We sat down to eat. For a while it was almost easy to pretend nothing was wrong. We passed dishes, clinked glasses. Evan told a story about a ridiculous contractor. Lauren rolled her eyes about a coworker who microwaved fish in the office break room. We laughed. If you've ever gone through real betrayal, you'll know this feeling. It's almost surreal sitting across from someone who has plans for your death and hearing them complain about traffic like any other Tuesday. But under the table, my hands were steady. I knew what I was about to do. Halfway through the meal, as the first bottle of wine ran low and everyone's shoulders dropped just a little, I set my fork down. "Can I tell you both something strange?" I asked. They looked up. "I had a dream," I said. "A very detailed dream. About us." Lauren smiled. "Oh, no," she teased. "One of your prophetic dreams. You used to tell me about those in college, the ones where you swore you saw the test questions ahead of time." I smiled back faintly. "This one wasn't about a test," I said. "Well, not that kind anyway." Evan leaned back, swirling the last of his wine. "This should be good," he said. "Hit us with your spooky story, babe." "Babe?" My stomach clenched, but my face stayed calm. "In my dream, I began. There was a woman. Let's call her Claire." Lauren's hand tightened around her glass. "Claire was in her 50s, I went on. She'd lost her first husband, inherited a business, made something of herself. Strong, capable, respected. But lonely." I glanced at Evan. "One day she met a charming man," I said. "A little younger, handsome, funny, good at saying exactly what she needed to hear. He told her he didn't care about her money. He just wanted her heart." Evan's smile dimmed. "In this dream, Claire's father didn't trust the man," I continued softly. "He told her, 'Be careful. Some men see a woman like you as a walking bank account with a pulse.' He even hired someone to keep an eye on things after he died." Lauren shifted in her chair. "But Claire was in love," I said. "So she married the charming man. She let him into her home, her life, her accounts. Little by little, he started moving things, joint access, signatures she didn't remember signing, trips to poker games she never attended." The air at the table changed. Evan set his glass down. "Grace," he said lightly, a hint of warning in his tone. "Is this going somewhere?" "Shh," Lauren murmured, eyes wide. "I want to hear the rest." In the dream, I said, my voice steady, the charming husband got himself into trouble. Big trouble. Debts to men who didn't like the word no. And suddenly the woman's life insurance became very interesting. I let that hang for a heartbeat. In this dream, the husband took out a big policy on Claire's life, I said. $2 million. He forged her name, used her money to pay the premiums, all while telling her he couldn't sleep at night. He was so afraid of losing her. Lauren's face had gone pale. Evan's jaw tightened. I smiled faintly as if none of this was about us. Then one night I continued. Claire's car almost took a wrong turn, except the driver didn't let her out, and she saw a little further behind the curtain. Evan pushed his chair back a fraction of an inch. "You've been talking to that security clown too much," he said, trying to laugh. "This is not funny, Grace." I raised my eyes to his. "I'm not finished," I said. The room felt very still. In my dream, I said quietly, "Claire realized her house wasn't as safe as she thought. The vitamins on her nightstand weren't as harmless as they seemed, and the two people she trusted most, her husband and her oldest friend, had been talking about her in rooms she wasn't supposed to hear." Lauren's napkin slipped from her lap. She didn't pick it up. In the dream, I went on, Claire did something the husband and the friend didn't expect. She went to an old lawyer. She changed her will. She changed the beneficiary on that big policy. She made sure that if she died suddenly or violently, not 1 cent would go to the charming man or the devoted friend. I folded my hands on the table. Instead, I said every dollar would go to a fund to help women like her who had trusted the wrong people. Silence. Pure, thick, suffocating silence. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "That's dark," she whispered. "Why would you dream something like that?" "Stress, maybe," I said. "Or maybe it was a warning. Dreams can be like that, you know. Sometimes they show us what we don't want to see while we're awake." Evan forced a laugh that sounded more like a cough. "And did your dream have a happy ending?" "At least?" he asked, voice tight. "Does Claire ride off into the sunset with her security guy or something?" "Not yet," I replied. The dream ended on a different note. What note? Lauren asked, almost against her will. I met both of their eyes, one after the other. In the last part of the dream, I said slowly, the husband and the friend found out there was no more profit to be made from the woman's death. No insurance payout. No inheritance. Nothing but the ugly truth of what they'd already done. I watched their faces. In the dream, I said they panicked. They started talking about alternatives, about forcing her to sign over certain assets, about making it look like a home invasion gone wrong. They forgot for a moment that walls can listen. My voice dropped, and then I finished the dream cut off. Right as they started planning the night. Evan's knuckles were white on the edge of the table. "Grace," he said very quietly now, "did you change something with the will?" "With the insurance," Lauren whispered. "Oh my God," I smiled. "Evan, I said if I told you my dream had become reality that I had already changed every document that matters. What would you do with that information?" He stared at me. His mask slipped for a fraction of a second. I saw it then, really saw it, the calculation in his eyes, the flicker of fury, the flash of fear. Then the mask snapped back into place. "I'd say you've let that old lawyer and that paranoid guard dog get into your head," he said slowly. "I'd say you're making drastic changes when you're traumatized. And I'd say we should undo anything you did in haste." Lauren swallowed hard. "Grace, tell me you're joking," she whispered. "You didn't really?" In the dream, I said gently. Claire stopped worrying about whether the people at her table believed her. She started worrying about whether the people at her table realized the money was gone before they did something they couldn't undo. Evan pushed his chair back and stood up. "I think this dinner is over," he said. Lauren rose too unsteady. "I should go," she stammered. This is not okay." "You're scaring me, Grace. You're talking like a woman who knows her life has a price tag I finished for her." "She's talking like someone who's been manipulated," Evan snapped. "I'm calling our attorney in the morning. We're going to get to the bottom of whatever Henderson talked you into." I stood up too, gathering plates with a hostess's automatic movements. "You do that," I said calmly. "I just wanted to share my dream, so that if anything happens to me, no one at this table can say they were surprised by the terms." We stood there for a heartbeat, three people who had shared holidays and secrets and laughter, now connected by something much darker. Then they left. Not together. That would have been too obvious, but close enough in time that I saw the headlights of their cars pull away almost in tandem. When the door closed and their engines faded, the house seemed to exhale. I carried the dishes to the sink, washed them slowly, dried them, put them away. Only when the kitchen was spotless did I sit down at the island, pull out the tablet, and press play.